Let's bring in Democratic strategist and former Harris senior advisor Mike Nellis and Dr. Lauren Wright, a NewsNation political contributor and conservative commentator. Good morning to both of you.
Morning.
Lauren, I'll start with you. The president suing the Wall Street Journal. You just heard me and Raquel talking about it. Also, Rupert Murdoch. Trump and Murdoch have a long history. I never considered it rocky. They seemed friendly. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, look, the reason the Wall Street Journal has credibility is because they release bombshells on Democrats and Republicans alike, and it's simply not their job to protect or defend the president. It's a pretty clear-cut issue. But, you know, the reason this scandal is so objectively bad for the president is because it's a lie. You know, it's either a lie that there was a client list, as you just mentioned in the previous conversation, or it's a lie that they ever intended to release the files. And I can't believe I'm saying this, Henna, but I'm actually kind of impressed with the stick-to-itness of Marjorie Taylor Greene and the Lauren Boeberts of the world, because they are very willing to depart from Trump on this, and it was a campaign promise. It's just bad no matter how you slice it.
Mike, your reaction?
Yeah, Donald Trump's been playing with fire for his entire political career on conspiracy theories, giving way to a home for people who believe that Barack Obama wasn't born in the United States, that Muslims were cheering 9/11 from New York City rooftops. And it's all been nonsense. And so, again, he's stuck in a position where he's either lying about what's in the files, what's not in the files, and his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, which we know he's lying about because there are photos of him partying with Jeffrey Epstein. They were very clearly friends. When it comes to this Wall Street Journal article, it's about a doodle that Donald Trump drew in a strange letter that he wrote to him for his birthday. Donald Trump claims that he never doodles. It's objectively false. There are a number of times that he has auctioned off a handwritten doodle that he has made himself with his signature for charity. So, like, we know that he is someone who does doodle, and then he lies about that. So he has no credibility here. Neither does Pam Bondi. Pam Bondi says, the list is on my desk. I'm going to release the list. Kash Patel says, when I'm FBI director, I'm going to have access to the list and the flight logs, and I'm going to release them. The minute they have access to that power, they don't do it, and they keep stringing people along. And now they want to unseal the grand jury testimony, which is a fraction of what's actually in the Epstein files. That's just a distraction. They know that they're not going to release anything significant because so much of it's going to have to be redacted to protect the victims, which is the right thing to do. But Donald Trump and Pam Bondi and Kash Patel could end this right now by releasing the Epstein file, by releasing the flight logs, by being honest and transparent, and they won't, which tells you everything about what's in those files.
Lauren, talk to me about these claims and just the impact it has on the Republican Party, but really overall.
Well, I actually don't think it would have the big impact it is right now if there was more transparency. And trust me, there's a lot of powerful Democrats in that file, too. There's Bill Clinton on the plane almost 20 times. There's Bill Richardson, you name it. And so what's strange to me, strategic-wise, is, you know, why make this into a bigger story when probably politically it's a wash and we don't know what's in there. It was a major campaign promise, and it's completely distracting from some very big successes that the administration has had on implementing policy.
The DOJ is now asking the judge to release the grand jury testimony in this case. I spoke to attorney Misty Maris earlier in the show. She said the testimony is not likely to bring the answers that a lot of us are looking for. Lauren, I'm going to stick with you for a minute. Is Pam Bondi now caught between a rock and a hard place, especially considering she said she had the list on her desk?
Yes, I think, you know, if I had to guess, maybe she didn't have the list, but it was a manner of speech or something like that. But that's just as bad. I mean, this is not good for the president. It's not good for the administration. Unfortunately, what happens in every single presidential administration is secretaries like Bondi ultimately take the fall and the president blames it on them. But I don't really know how this will shake out because, again, she is doing some really good work in other areas and she is implementing the president's agenda on many different fronts. She's a really effective advocate for him, but this is a pretty big mistake.
And Trump still has been very complimentary of Bondi. He
Yes.
really seems to be a fan. Mike, despite all the heat on Republicans that we're seeing, the Democrats are kind of flatlining right now. I think that's a safe assumption. Talk about the challenges the Democratic Party is facing.
Well, I don't think the Democrats are flatlining right now. There was a poll yesterday that had the Democrats up 8 points on the generic ballot, which would suggest we're in a strong position for the midterms. But I want to take a step back on Epstein for a second, because what people hate about American politics and what they dislike about our government is that the rich and the powerful are never held accountable. And so Laura brought up the fact that there are major Democrats potentially in these files. There's major Republicans on these files. There's celebrities in these files. I want to see it released regardless of political party, regardless of the politics. Because people need to be held accountable for their crimes. And I'm sick and tired of it, whether it was the Wall Street crisis in 2008, nobody was ever held accountable for tens of millions of Americans having their lives ruined and their homes taken away from them, whether it's the Diddy case, whether it's this case. I want to see people be held accountable for their crimes because the rich and the powerful were preying on young girls. And to me, this whole thing is super frustrating because Donald Trump and Pam Bondi and Kash Patel and the rest of them have played into a conspiracy theory because they believe that was electorally good for them. Donald Trump made the QAnon part of this country a huge part of the MAGA base, and now he's betraying them by refusing to do this. So I want to see people be held accountable. I don't care if it's Bill Clinton. I don't care if it's Donald Trump. Maybe Trump didn't do anything wrong. I don't know. Maybe this is the one time he's telling the truth, but I know that he's acting squirrely. So release everything, protect the victims, get it out there.
Let's switch gears here now. This week on Capitol Hill, former Biden official Annie Tomasini refusing to testify on Friday in the House Oversight Committee's investigation into former President Biden's mental fitness. She is now the third witness to plead the Fifth Amendment after a subpoena following the former president's doctor and a former aide to the president and First Lady. Mike, I'm going to stick with you. Why are these officials refusing to testify? We're talking about transparency. Do you agree with the decision?
Well, I'm all for transparency. I don't think anybody believes that the congressional Republicans are putting a serious investigation together. What they're trying to do is create a distraction. Every time Donald Trump's on the ropes about something, whether it's the economy and the fact that everything's more expensive and it's harder to buy groceries or buy a house, whether it's about Jeffrey Epstein or something, they start drudging up old stories that start coming up. And don't get me wrong, I'm the first Democrat to tell you Joe Biden should not have run for re-election. The way that his inner circle handled that was horrendous and hurtful to the party and to the country. But ultimately, like, congressional Republicans are just interested in scoring cheap political points. So I don't blame anybody for going, I'm not going to deal with this, because I'll tell you from my own self, I was investigated by the House Judiciary Committee last year for a right-wing conspiracy theory and was subpoenaed multiple times and was like, I'm not going to engage with this because it isn't real. They're just trying to score cheap political points, and it's an abuse of the government power. Again, maybe there's a real investigation that needs to happen. There's some real transparency that should be out there, but it's just a distraction from Epstein, the economy, the rest of the administration's failures.
We know Comer calls the lack of testimony a, quote, pattern of key Biden confidants seeking to shield themselves from criminal liability. Lauren, what do you make of these claims?
I think it's extraordinary, and frankly, I'll never get over it. This is one of the biggest lies that was ever told to the American public, that Biden was okay and fit to serve. He shouldn't have been president. I don't even care about the running for re-election part. Kamala Harris probably should have been president before the re-election campaign. This is a person who aides told us was sharp as ever behind the scenes, who they said is the smartest person in the room. He's more energetic than we've ever seen before. Those were lies, and that very clearly came to the fore in that debate performance where the president couldn't advocate for his agenda, couldn't put full sentences together. And it's really dangerous because he was elected and we don't know who's making decisions. And I would really, really like to know. I don't care if it is a Democrat or a Republican. That was a big betrayal. And I think this is one of the most important issues Congress can look into. I want to know the answers.
Mike, how does the Democratic Party refocus the messaging away from the story?
Well, I don't think it's about deflecting it away from the story, but I think what we have to do is start to embrace a new generation of leadership. Like, people are frustrated with the Democratic Party over what happened with Joe Biden, over the economy. Now everything, I would argue, is a lot worse and more chaotic under Donald Trump. But we need new, fresh leaders who are going to rise up, and we need to be putting them forward. We need to put them on TV. We need to be running them for office. We got to change the way we run our campaign. So I think it's just about building a new version of the Democratic Party and getting back to our roots. We're a party that fights for the little guy. We're the party that fights for working people. And we've gotten away from that right now. And about 80% of this country, whether you're Democrat or Republican, you voted for Kamala Harris or you voted for Donald Trump, you're struggling right now. Like, people cannot find enough money to put food on the table. They're using Klarna, those credit services, to buy groceries right now. This is ridiculous. And so we need to make sure that people have a pathway to the American dream, be able to buy a house, be able to retire with dignity, start a family. And we got to get back to that. And so don't get me wrong, I think there's some real staring into the abyss that Democrats have to do about what happened with Joe Biden and the way our party handled that. But ultimately, it's about getting back to basics about how we're going to help people.
Mike Nellis, Dr. Lauren Wright, really appreciate both of you this morning. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks.
Thanks for having me.
And